Welcome to our journey through time, discovering the origins of one of the most iconic sporting events in history, the Olympic Games. In this video, we will explore how, over 2,700 years ago, in the cradle of Western civilization, a small temple in Olympia dedicated to Zeus became the center of an event that unites people and celebrates human excellence. We will discover how these games, born as a religious event, transformed into a symbol of peace and fair competition, directly inspiring the modern Olympics. And we will bring to light the stories, legends, and traditions that gave rise to the Olympic Games of ancient Greece. If you like our content here at Antiche Olimpiadi, please remember to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and leave a comment below. Your engagement with this channel is truly important to us. Sport in Greece has very ancient origins. Already in the Minoan Age, we have archaeological evidence of practices such as running, boxing, and bull jumping. However, while the existence of these sports is well attested in artistic form, their role in Minoan society is still debated. What seems certain is that they both served as entertainment and were also linked to sacred ceremonies and religious rites. Only in a later age do we find the first real description of athletic competition, the games organized by Achilles for the funeral of Patroclus, the events of which are narrated in Book 23 of the Iliad. This type of competition had a symbolic meaning. It allowed the deceased to regain the vitality lost in death through shows of strength and athletic skill. These competitions included various events: boxing matches, horse-drawn chariot races, wrestling, running, javelin and shot put throwing, archery, and armed combat. Each of these events was directly related to a skill demonstrated in battle, and of course, professional athletes did not yet exist. The competitors in these contests were therefore the same warriors who faced each other on the battlefields of Troy. This narrative allows us to shed light on some significant aspects of the origins and value of sport in ancient Greece. One is its connections with both funeral rites and hero cults. Another aspect is the extreme level of competitiveness among the participants. Ancient Greek society was highly competitive in all respects, and winning was essential for affirming one's value in the community. Greek athleticism was also inextricably linked to aristocratic ideology. In fact, the aristocrat and the athlete shared several values: physical superiority, the desire for primacy and glory, and contempt for the loser. The ancient Greeks are, without doubt, the civilization that most thoroughly cultivated the athletic ideal. In fact, in ancient Greece, gymnastic and sporting activities were considered a fundamental part of training citizens, from both a physical and a character point of view. The aim was to combine the development of the spirit with that of the body, thereby obtaining a sort of moral and physical perfection of the individual. The points of reference for this development were deceased heroes, and, as we already mentioned, athletic competitions were frequently associated with the cults surrounding these heroes. Another aspect that emerges regarding the origin of the games is their deep connection with sanctity and sacred rites. The city-states of ancient Greece, or the polis, often organized local sports competitions on the occasion of religious festivals, and they were held at the most important shrines and temples. These competitions featured a complex ritual that allowed men to connect with the divine world through sacrifice. The most prestigious of these competitions were the Pan-Hellenic Games, that is, the Pythian, Nemean, Isthmian, and Olympic Games. The latter, the Olympic Games, was held at the Temple of Zeus in Olympia, and over the centuries it became the largest sporting event in the entire Greek world. It occurred every 4 years, between what we know today as July and August, coinciding with the largest and most important religious festival in all of ancient Greece, the festival in honor of Zeus. The starting year, according to the historian Timaeus, was 776 BC. This year became the basis of the first Greek calendar. That is, 776 BC was considered year zero. The Olympic Games thus became a very important point of reference in the common Greek calendar, to such an extent that other historical facts and events were situated relative to these 4-year cadences. Why did the Games take place in Olympia? The most important reason is its character as a sacred place, as it was the seat of a cult dedicated to Zeus, one of the most important divinities of the ancient Greek world. We can also identify political reasons that probably influenced the choice. Over the years, Olympia remained a sanctuary and never became a true city, which kept it out of the competition for supremacy among the city-states. Finally, there was an important geographical aspect. Olympia is located in Elis, in the heart of the Peloponnese region, a place that was easy to reach by both land and sea, and which therefore held a central position in the Greek world. As with all events in the ancient Greek world, there is a mythical aspect to the birth of the Olympics. In this case, however, there are several different mythological traditions that are all considered equally valid. The first tells of Oenomaus, ruler of Pisa, a land in the Elis region. Fearing the fulfillment of a prophecy that said he would be killed by his son-in-law, he tried everything to prevent the marriage of his daughter Hippodamia. He settled on the tactic of demanding that every suitor compete against him in a chariot race. If the challenger won, he could have Hippodamia as his wife. Otherwise, Oenomaus would kill him. This strategy was practically infallible, as he was unbeatable in the chariot race, thanks to his 2 extremely fast horses given to him by the god Ares, and driven by the charioteer Myrtilus, son of Hermes. But when Pelops' turn came, the young man, frightened by seeing the displayed heads of the less fortunate challengers who came before him, cunningly decided to bribe the charioteer to tamper with the chariot. During the race, the chariot fell apart, and the king was violently thrown to the ground and died. This allowed Pelops to marry Hippodamia and become king. But he knew his strategy had been unfair, so after he took the throne, he organized the first Olympic Games in honor of Zeus, so as to appease the wrath of the gods. This mythical episode is so important that it is depicted on one of the 2 pediments of the Temple of Zeus at Olympia. Another tradition comes from the first Olympian ode by Pindar, a well-known Greek poet of the Games. In this version, the origin of the Olympics is traced back to the funeral games held in honor of Pelops. Here, we can once again see the connections to hero cults and funeral rites. Other sources, cited directly by Pindar in his 10th Olympian ode, attribute the foundation of the games to Heracles, without explicitly contradicting the previous tradition. According to these sources, after the demigod Heracles diverted the course of the river Alpheus to clean out the Augean stables, he erected a sacred enclosure around the tomb of Pelops and raised 12 altars, one for each god of Olympus, and consecrated the area on behalf of Zeus. He also planted a sacred grove of olive trees there, from which, even in historical times, the crowns for the winners of the games were picked. Historiography, however, offers us a different version of events. According to the writer and geographer Pausanias, the original Olympic Games arose from the signing of a treaty stipulated between Iphitus, king of Elis, and Lycurgus, king of Sparta, to put an end to the continuous conflicts ravaging Elis, the region where Olympia is located. This treaty both confirmed the sanctity and inviolability of Olympia and the broader Elis region, and also established periods of military truce that, over the centuries, stretched to as long as 3 months. This peace allowed the athletes and the various delegations to reach the Temple of Zeus at Olympia, that is, the site where the Olympic Games were held, in complete safety. The Olympic Games were established on the occasion by Iphitus himself to thank the gods for the peace obtained. The temple therefore became one of the most sacred places in ancient Greece, and the Olympic Games the symbol of political and military truce. Anyone who dared to break the treaty would be fined and expelled from the Games. This truce, called Ekekeria, ultimately transformed the Olympic Games from a purely local competition into the most prestigious of the Pan-Hellenic Games. Without this sacred truce, very few people would have risked their lives to reach Olympia from more distant regions, many of which found themselves constantly at war. The evidence attesting to these accords, as first described by Pausanias and later confirmed by Aristotle, was a bronze disc on which the text of the treaty was engraved in a spiral pattern. The disc was preserved in the nearby Temple of Hera at Olympia. As previously mentioned, the first Olympics took place in 776 BC, and it was initially a local sporting event. The athletes were exclusively Greek, and the only event was the Stadion, a sprint race that took place inside the stadium of Olympia. In this competition, the most important thing was victory. There were therefore no silver or bronze medals in the original Olympic Games. You either won or you lost, and defeat was disgrace. Crown or death, this was what an athlete aspired to just before competing. This was the true spirit of the Olympic Games. The first Olympics was won by Korebos, a sprinter from the city of Elis. He therefore became, in all respects, the first Olympian in history. At that time, the participants were not professional athletes. In Greece, professionalism began to emerge only in the post-classical era. In the first centuries of the Olympic Games, therefore, athletes did not live off of their sport, but supported themselves in other ways. Korybosh, for example, was a baker. The winner of the stadion earned the privilege of lighting the fire on the sacrificial altar. According to some, this is the origin of the tradition of the Olympic torch. Winning at the Olympic Games was the greatest distinction of an athlete's career. The prize was not money, but an olive wreath, which held great symbolic and sacred value. That victory alone was enough to consecrate the winners once they returned to their homelands. In fact, they were granted extensive privileges. The doors to prestigious political careers were opened, statues were erected in their name, and songs of glory were sung that led to eternal fame. The champion was considered a hero, and even compared to a demigod. A bit like today's athletes, who leave their mark on history and become legends in their own right. As we've mentioned, the Olympic Games lasted only one day at first, and the only event was a race. Over the years, however, the Games gradually expanded to include other events, and the duration of the Olympics extended to the canonical 5 days. Participation in the Games was originally reserved for all free Greek males who had never faced legal punishment. Women, slaves, foreigners, and those who were considered sacrilegious were therefore excluded from the Games. Later, after the expansion that occurred during the reign of Alexander the Great and the Roman conquest of Greece, the Games opened up to the entire Mediterranean. One truly surprising element is that, in ancient times, athletes competed naked. The origin of nudity at the Games is uncertain, and it seems that even back then, the Greeks themselves did not have a clear idea of the motivation behind this practice, or even the exact date when it began. According to Thucydides, a historian active towards the end of the 5th century BC, it was the Spartans who introduced this custom. It had happened very shortly before the time of writing, perhaps just a few decades prior, whereas before, athletes wore loincloths, a strip of cloth that covered the hips and groin. However, according to Pausanias, who also penned the first tourist guide for Greece, the practice was introduced at the 15th Olympiad in 720 BC. He tells of a certain Orsippus of Megara, who was the winner of the stadion. During the race, he found that his loincloth was a hindrance to him, so he pulled it off, thereby significantly increasing his speed. From that day on, competing naked became the norm. From the archaeological point of view, however, we have numerous attestations on pottery, where athletes are always represented naked, starting from at least 650 BC. As you can see, there is a lot of disagreement between the sources, and it is difficult to definitively date the practice. And with that last anecdote on the origin of the Olympic Games, our episode ends here. If you'd like to learn more about sports in antiquity or the development of the Olympics over the centuries, check out this video linked above. Before we say goodbye, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment. Your engagement is essential to help this channel grow. Thank you all, and see you soon!